All right, I'm here with Emmet Peppers, and this is going to be part one. This is recording on Monday night, and so this is first part is going to be released on Tuesday morning, and then there might be a part two or part three to this conversation released in following days. So Emmet, wanted to welcome you back on the show. How have you been?
Thanks. Doing well, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely in a much better mood after today's Tesla price movement. So, it feels good. I'm sure all your listeners are pretty happy after today's movement. So it's great. Yeah, how about you? How you doing?
Yeah, I've been doing great. Took a 1 week RV trip and just got back this afternoon, and yeah, pumped up about just talking with you and talking about just a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and your soundproof room is almost ready, right? I mean, it's coming
Yeah,
along.
yeah. It finished. I got home and it lets in too much sound still, and so my
Oh
kids,
no.
yeah, all my kids, I can hear all the noises. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. And then my wife and I we've been talking about like moving all day today and yesterday. So
Yeah.
yeah, we've been wanting to move to Seattle for a while, and something like we had some family type of health issues. My mom, and then she's doing a lot better, and so we're kind of considering it again. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why we actually did our room rather than make like a whole new addition to the house, so we could be a bit more flexible. And we'll probably keep the house as like a second house and stuff, to come back to if we need to. Um,
Sure.
but
Cool.
anyways, yeah. So I wanted to ask about the S&P 500 um,
Yeah.
uh, play, and it's interesting because after your bet, I've been watching, the option. It's funny because like I actually have a position too. I made like that same morning, and
Okay.
it's a much smaller position, but I don't really care about my position. I'm always just looking at the January 15 700 strikes. Like, my strikes are more like 400, 500, 600. It's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
more conservative and stuff. But yeah, it's like what's the biggest question I have, and what others have as well, is kind of what's your current state? Like, are you still in this trade, and what are your thinking about thoughts about exiting this trade? Like, what's your exit plan?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just so we know, like, just so we always repeat, none of this is investment advice to anyone. It's just our own personal trading experience, and everyone needs to kind of do their own decision making for whatever investments they do. This is just us discussing our own personal trading. So for me, I still have the vast majority of the position on. In the fund, I have three accounts. I have my personal account, my IRA account, and the fund, right? And in the fund, it was a much smaller position I took on. It was, I don't know, 2% or something of the fund's portfolio spent on these contracts. So it was like 250 contracts. And then I sold 50 of the contracts last week when it was a 5x return, just to be net zero on the trade if it went down to nothing, just to kind of manage the risk there, so I could show prospective investors in the future, like, this is how I'm going to try to manage risk from time to time on these types of moonshot trades and such. But in my personal account, my IRA account, where the vast majority of the position on, I haven't taken anything off the table. So I think the contracts closed today around $50 a contract, something like that. So it's a pretty nice return so far. And, I still think there's a lot of room to go. I mean, it's been very interesting last week how there was very low trading volume. And this week, today, Monday, the first day that the volume kind of spiked a little bit, and we had a, $40 plus move in
Hmm.
the stock, and so um, I think there could potentially be a lot more to go. I could be very wrong. This might be
Hmm.
the top. Who knows?
Yeah.
But the possibility, I think, is there for it to go up significantly still.
Yeah. For those who are just joining us for the first time without understanding the background, I'll link to the past four interviews I've done with you. And
Yeah.
the last couple have been about this big kind of options bet that you've played, where you put in about $2.7 million into long,
Hmm.
out of the money option calls. So the stock
Hmm.
has to basically close at $700 or higher by
Hmm.
January 15th in order, but you can always, sell them beforehand, to make money. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what are your kind of scenarios going forward? Like, do you see, like, if it runs up fast, are you going to take more off the table? Or are you just going to just wait and see to see how far it goes?
Yeah, I mean, my plan all along, I think I mentioned it in a previous interview that, if something runs up faster than I anticipate, then I've kind of learned my lesson to take a little bit off the table, whether it's 10, 20, or 25% or something off the table, just to kind of like make a little bit of money. If it's like a 10x return, for example, then I can guarantee myself some profit and return, and then let the rest of the position kind of run for a while and be more risky with it, and see what happens. So I'm kind of tempted to do that. I may not. I haven't decided yet. I'm going to see how the rest of this, next few days play out, and decide. It's there's a lot of optionality with the option. I picked the January 15th 700 strike calls, and so because they expire in January, I was hoping to have more of the run up towards the end of December to decide whether I want to take, realized gains for tax consequences this calendar year or next calendar year on this type of trade. So
Hmm.
that's probably not going to be a big factor in my decision at this point, but we'll see. We'll see. I think.
Okay.
I mean, what do you think? Do you think the stock could? I mean, given your research, I know you're not a short-term price. I'm not necessarily normally a short-term
Yeah.
price guy either,
Yeah.
but do you have any inclination, Dave?
Yeah. Like I was actually thinking about like, it's interesting. Like, um, I'm actually quite fascinated by the short term movements.
Hmm.
It's like
Hmm.
something that because I think it represents psychology a lot and market behavior.
Hmm.
So I think I mean a lot of people who are so called long term, they're like, oh, ignore short term completely, but there's something fascinating about like how it moves and what
Yeah.
happens. And I do think there are times where you make some big bets and you can. There are some times where it's like the odds are in your favor, because like yeah, have you heard of the efficient market hypothesis?
Yeah. Yeah. That everything's kind of priced efficiently and the market's correct, sort of, right? Something
Exactly,
like
that
that.
that all the information is already out there and the market has priced in all the information. And that's like pretty much like the conventional view that in order to get like an outsized gain, you need to have outsized risk. That's the only way like to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
But I think that's like to me it's a faulty view. It's more like if you're part of the herd and you don't have certain like ways to hack the system, you know,
Hmm.
then that's true. You will be taking higher risk for higher reward. But I think there are certain times and certain ways to hack the system where you get exposure to high reward without without the equal high risk.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's still some risk. Oh, there's always risk, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's not like completely equal, right? I think to me that's like kind of the fascinating thing. um,
Yeah.
yeah, about some of the movements and also finding opportunities. So I was last week I was talking with my wife, and she's been she has her own options bets going on and stuff with S&P 500, and she wanted to buy some more and do some other stuff. And so we're talking, and I was like kind of playing devil's advocate a bit, trying to see what her thesis was. And I'm like, usually options, they all work out. Like every
Hmm.
Friday, like all the expirations, all the money makers, it all just works, whether it's
Yeah.
weekly, monthly, or quarterly, right? It just,
Yeah.
like, if there's any money to be made, like people are gonna make money and it's gonna just all work out. So I'm
Yeah.
like, you know, that's probably what's gonna happen in Tesla's case. And then she was pushing me and she's like, are you sure? Are you sure? And it's like, I think there's gonna be a shortage. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I'm like, let's count, all the outstanding like options out there. And so we started to like, go through different strike prices and especially like, around the S&P inclusion. And we're like, this is like a week ago. We're like, there's only like 17 million calls around the like within a couple $100 of or $17 million or 17 million worth of
Shares worth of
shares, yeah, of
calls.
calls, right?
Oh, interesting.
Around like a couple $100 of Tesla expiring December 18th. So I'm like,
Hmm.
17 million, that's barely nothing, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like,
It's not
shouldn't
much.
there be a ton of, option makers, you know, selling all this stuff? And so then we started to go through other strike prices and we started looking through the volume, the daily volume, and we spent like 3 or 4 hours, just talking and going through all this stuff. And then I'm like, oh man, this really could be a case where there just isn't enough shares. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
it's like
yeah.
in 99.9999% of the cases, of every Friday or monthly or whatever, even S&P 500 inclusions, everything works out. But I'm like, working out the numbers, I'm like, yeah, this could be one of those crazy instances where it just is one of those like, historic, just weird things,
Yeah, yeah, it could be.
where
Yeah,
people just weren't prepared for it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah, I remember
fascinating.
I remember thinking similar to what you were saying. I remember thinking, back to when the S&P announced, and I looked at the options pricing, and I think on Twitter I put a couple tweets about how excited I was going to look into some options to buy, and people were asking me, like, what options? I'm going to buy options too, and then I said something like, yeah, I mean, if we all buy options, it might break the simulation though, because it's like, I feel like, like we're all going to make a ton of money if we all buy options, at the right, before it sort of went up a lot. And it just seems too good to be true in some ways, but that's just a cliche. And maybe this is the case where it's actually true.
Yeah,
We'll
it's like the
see.
the concept I was thinking about was this concept of unpreparedness,
Hmm.
and usually like things work out where there is preparedness, where the markets and the system motivates, right, through profit players to get prepared for different things. But then there's like once in a blue moon, I think, situations where this the markets somehow don't work
Mm.
well enough to prepare for certain big events, you know?
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
just is out of sync. And everyone assumes it's prepared. Everyone is prepared.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in actuality, it's like that's not the case. And
Yeah.
they're rare cases. Um,
Yeah. I think a lot of it is also, you've seen, some of the S&P Twitter folks like the guy Gary Black and other, they're knowledgeable people, and a lot of them are saying, well, typically when a stock is announced, or look at Facebook, it only went up 12 to 14%. They compare it to previous cases, and they think that it's going to be similar here. And this is different. This time it's different. I think everyone's starting to realize that. And I think, it's just it's like one of the last huge opportunities I see in Tesla to make a huge return on options. We're at 600 billion market cap now. That's crazy,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, I mean, the stock has doubled or went up like tenfold in the last like 12 months or something like that, right?
Hmm.
It's never going to go up tenfold in 12 months again. Like, I think we can pretty confidently say it's not going to be 6 trillion in a year from now. Maybe 10 years, but in
Uh,
1 year, no way. So this is like, maybe it'll double in a few months, or even from the S&P included, who knows? But it's not going to like double again after that anytime soon. It's just, this might be the last real big super run in Tesla stock. I mean, other stocks I think will have similar types of moves eventually, that we can pick out over time. But you and I, and especially we've studied Tesla so carefully for 10 years and the stock, we both have looked at the stock every day, multiple times throughout the day. So it's like subconsciously we've got a feel, like a unique feel for the stock and how it moves. And so I think that's hard to understand, and maybe that's our advantage for this type of super move, catching it.
yeah, yeah. I think yeah, we'll see, like I think your whole thesis in the beginning was kind of this thesis of unpreparedness, meaning the market wouldn't be prepared for the magnitude of, number of
Mm,
shares that
that's
needed
right.
to be bought. When in normal situations, I think the market would work itself out, like people would, buy ahead of time, like contracts would be, made, or all this stuff. Um,
Yeah.
what are some scenarios that you think might happen in the last like couple days of inclusion? Do you think the last day on December 18th, like the last hour or something, do you think it just like it
It
goes up,
breaks
or
the
what
simulation, and we're just like, what? $1 million a share? I mean, people dream, fantasize about that
happens?
infinity squeeze or whatever you call it, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think if anything, possibly something happens like that a few days before expiration, and then it crashes the 17th and 18th, or 16th, 17th, 18th. I don't know. I'm just throwing out stories or
Uh-huh.
narratives that are possibilities, right? I think in terms of, I guess, probabilities, like you said in a previous podcast, and I think there's a real chance, it's going to spike early, and then there's going to be a ton of profit taking from like option speculators and so forth that creates a really volatile drop, and so it could go to like 800, then down to 600, in 2 days or something, something like that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could just be a steady rise. It's so
Mm-hmm.
big and so liquid now. It used to be that when Tesla was a $50 billion, when we started, like a $3 or $4 billion market cap company, and then for so long from 2014 to 19, it was like 30 to $50 billion market cap. So it used to be when it was that size, you'd have big shorts, big pocketed short, hedge funds kind of like put in some big orders to short it and downtick the stock significantly and cause distress and shake a lot of speculators out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now it's so big at 600 billion market cap, like I don't even I don't think there's enough shorts with big pockets out there to kind of like put a big downtick on the stock price, especially during this next week or two, to really create panic. And so
Mm-hmm.
there might just be like a steady rise every day of some sort, which would be great. That would be the best case. No one wants to see roller coasters, really. We all
Mm-hmm.
just want to see a nice steady rise of $30 a day or whatever. That'd be great.
Yeah,
And that'd be awesome.
just $30 a day.
Yeah, 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 that'd be great.
um,
But but like the faster it goes up, the more likely there's going to be a big correction downwards at some point, and you don't know if that correction is going to be, a 50% drop from where it started from, or a 20% drop, or 10% drop. You just don't know, but there will be.
yeah.
And
Um,
then after the S&P 500, anything could happen too. I mean, after the inclusion date, there could be further run up. Make benchmarked funds might all be getting on board and buying, or it could keep going. People keep assuming like, oh, after S&P inclusion, stocks typically drop 5 to 10%, 5 to 8%, or whatever it is. They're speculating and comparing to previous, but this is different.
yeah.
And so it's possible it could keep running up after S&P inclusion,
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I guess one scenario would be kind of like it runs up, let's say to 800 or higher a few days before inclusion. And then let's say there's a bunch of profit taking. I was thinking another scenario is it goes up. Let's say we enter the last day at like 750, but then like the last like 15 minutes, it just like maybe goes up another 50 or $100 or something, crazy, because this is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
there's just like, people are just, I don't know,
Panic
waiting.
buying
Yeah.
almost. Yeah.
But there's different scenarios, I guess. And obviously it could completely be a different scenario that we're thinking about. It could go down, from here, who knows?
Yeah.
I think there's a Frank Thielen. He goes by Frank SG in Tesla Motors Club.
Yeah.
He just posted a thread on Twitter saying that he thinks that it's possible that there won't be enough, or that buyers on the 18th, they won't completely finish their purchasing, and they might have to finish it during the next week for a few days. And so there's possibility that maybe there won't be this crazy drop off right away the following week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's a great follow, I think, on Twitter.
Yeah.
He's been posting great stuff on Tesla Motors Club. And I mean, the other guy I like as well is Tesla Truth.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're very good.
he's been posting on Tesla Motors Club under Tesla fact checking. Yeah, for many
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked both of them, for interviews, and then yeah, they're more private, so I totally
Yeah.
understand that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, no, they put a lot of good information out though in the forums in the past and on Twitter now. Yeah, I agree 100%. You got to find those people that, you can trust. Not, you always trust but verify. You always want to be skeptical of what everyone's saying, but you always, it's good to get insights from a variety of sources, and there are definitely some sources to get insights from.
Yeah. What happens if like Tesla jumps to something crazy, like let's say 900 or 1,000?
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
do? Do you reverse your position, you think?
No, I would never reverse on Tesla. Like that's one of those stocks
Really?
I would not ever short. Like if anything, you'd close out the position, but I
Uh-huh.
never put on puts or short it. No way.
Really?
Like
Why wouldn't you
really.
why wouldn't you like buy puts? Like if it, let's say it's $1,000, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't the odds and probability be on your side that, let's say, buy puts like a month out or something, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
six
Yeah.
hundred or $700. Like, why not?
Well, I mean, I see a scenario. I mean, like we could be entering kind of like an Amazon valuation territory now that it's S&P 500 included. Benchmark funds can't ignore it. That's a big thing. All these benchmark fund, 90% of benchmark funds have no position in Tesla as of like a week ago, and so now they all have to like look at it closely and make decisions. And if you include all those benchmark funds, they're going to make decisions. Some this week, some next week, some the following, some over the next couple of months, and
Mhm.
so there could just be a steady accumulation of buying, and it could have an insane valuation. This is a small, in my mind, I'm trying to temper my expectations on
Yeah.
this, but it's a possibility that it just like has an insane like growth valuation bigger than Amazon ever had, even potentially,
Mm.
just given the supply and demand and how many people are so, I guess you could say, like, just super bullish on Tesla. Like, you know, we would like never sell at any price. There's a lot of people that would never sell at any price. I don't know if Amazon probably had some subset of investors like that, but I've never seen it as anything as big as Tesla, right? And if you have all the shorts kind of getting out, and it's not big enough for shorts to really down tick it or stop it. It's like a huge tidal wave of investors coming in, and I would never short it, or I mean, I would sell some positions,
Yeah.
obviously, but I would not sell the majority, and I'd want to be part of that wave and hold that. Yeah,
Wow. Even if Tesla's like valued at $1 trillion market cap, like
absolutely.
in the
Yeah, I
next week
mean,
or two.
yeah, it's possible. I want to hold some of
Is
that.
that
Yeah, I want to hold some of
okay?
that. Yeah, I'm going to hold some of that indefinitely. I mean, we agree that within a few years it
Got it.
should more
Yeah.
likely be
So
valued
you
at
might
that.
sell
Yeah.
some, but you wouldn't buy puts or
Exactly. I
yeah.
wouldn't even
Got
buy
it.
at this point. I wouldn't even buy more. Like just like if
Yeah.
I had extra cash on the sideline
Yeah.
sitting there, just because it's risen so much, I
Yeah.
wouldn't buy more right now. I'd wait for a
Yeah.
drop, but that drop might not happen
Yeah.
either.
Okay. I'm gonna pose a question to you, similar to a question you posed to me. Like, wait, what? It's a December. So a year ago. A year ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You texted me, and you're like, "Hey, Dave. Like, what price would you cash out all of your Tesla shares?" Right? I'm like, "What? I don't know." And you're like, $1,000. I'm like, no, right? Or something.
And
Right?
this is pre-split numbers too.
Yeah,
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 this is
yeah,
pre-split.
yeah. This is pre-split, right? So, um, and you're like $1,500. I'm like, I don't know, or something. And you're like, I'm like, why are you asking, right? And like, you're like something like everyone has their price in mind, has a price, right? Everyone
We
has
all
a
have a
price to sell.
price.
And so I'm like, I don't know. It's like, no, I'm like holding, pretty much long term. And then you're like $2,000, right? And I'm like, okay, fine. $2,000, I'll sell it. But then I'm like, no, actually, I need to be confident that it will drop at least 50% for me to sell a lot because then I want to buy back, lower. But if I wasn't confident that it would drop 50%, then I've got all these taxes to pay. We're both in California, et cetera. It's like, yeah, it's not
Yeah,
cheap. And so,
crazy.
yeah, I need 50%, like a cushion here. And so,
Yeah,
I think we left off at like something like 2,500. I don't know, something way up there, right?
yeah.
As some price, but even that I wasn't, confident of selling. But I'll pose a question to you, like, hey, what's your price? That if what would Tesla need to be at where you're just like, oh, I'm out of here, like,
I'd sell a significant amount or all
yeah,
of it.
like 75% of your shares, you'll just like exit.
I mean,
What
I
valuation
think
Tesla need to be at by the end of the year? Let's
by the
say,
end of this year,
yeah,
this
end of this
calendar
year where
year,
you'll sell 75% of your shares.
I think if it was like a 2 trillion
2 trillion.
market cap. Yeah, yeah. So that'd be like $2,000 a share, something like
Got
that.
it.
Yeah. I mean, if it got to that, I would sell 75% and just hold the other 25% indefinitely, but then use that 75% to do different. I'd pay enormous taxes on it,
Yeah.
obviously, and
Got
maybe
it.
buy back in if it drops, but if
Yeah.
not, just do other things. Yeah.
But you wouldn't buy puts?
No, no, I would not
Really?
buy puts because I
Wow.
think,
Huh.
like I said, there's a chance that Tesla's like entering kind of a new paradigm in terms of how institutional investors are looking at it too. Like
Mm.
Netflix and
Yeah.
Amazon, they've had these incredible valuations that no one can really explain, right? Unless you're like really a diehard Netflix or Amazon, investor, and so
Yeah.
we're like diehard Tesla investors. So we can certainly see the multi-trillion market cap in a few years, if they execute well. But I think on the outside, people are going to look at Tesla as they look at Amazon or Netflix, or even more so um, after all these institutional investors pile in.
Yeah. Like I have like mixed feelings about this. I mean, it's a fascinating topic because it's like it deals with also like the market or the sentiment of big money as well, right? And how they have have changed. Like because like look think about it, just a year and a half ago, Tesla was at like a $50 billion valuation, right?
Yeah,
And people were talking about, like it's still going to zero, et cetera,
yeah,
right? And the shift to like Tesla at like $600 billion or more market cap, and who knows, in a couple of weeks what it'll be at. But it's interesting, just I don't know what you call it, the fickleness or the massive shift,
mm,
whereas the company itself hasn't really changed that much. It's gone through some profitable quarters, etc., but it's not like it's changed 20x, amount
yeah,
in terms
yeah,
of its
yeah,
execution.
yeah,
But it's fascinating to me because it's like as much as people and big money like join the bandwagon to rag on Tesla at 50 billion, now it seems like they're joining the bandwagon to like cheer on Tesla at higher
yeah,
valuations, to be part
yeah,
of like this. Tesla is now part of this like established mega cap tech, growth stock, pile.
yeah. And
Yeah.
why I think it could still keep going, like you said, exactly like you said, but I think there's more people to still drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak. Like
Hmm.
when I put I put up this Barron's article. I don't know if you saw it, or if I sent it to you, or I
Hmm.
think I
Yeah.
tweeted it about my analysis of why I could get to 800 or whatever. And I saw the comment section, and the comment section was like mostly negative. Or when you go to kind of like traditional investing forums, whether it's Barron's or Wall Street Journal, or even Seeking Alpha, that's not really as traditional, but even there, like you still see a lot of negative sentiment from like traditional high net worth investors on Tesla, right? You don't see you see a lot of people ragging on it still, and so to me that says there's a lot more people to sway and drink the Kool-Aid to kind of accept it and you know get into the Tesla one way or another, right? So when everyone is like, oh, Tesla's like how Apple is now, sort of when everyone's like, oh, Apple's great, Apple's a good investment, and there's very few people that say it's not, then I'm kind of nervous. Like I'm not sure if that stock can double again.
Sure.
But Tesla, the fact that there's so many people that still kind of rag on it, like we say, like there's a lot of people that still can jump in and help move the price up significantly or the valuation up.
Yeah, I think robotaxi is kind of like the X factor in my opinion. Like if it
Yeah,
really rolls out
yeah,
and we really see like robotaxi, like people are completely discounting robotaxi right now, at least big money analysts, etc., because
yeah,
like it's just this perpetual like postponement, right?
hmm,
Next year, next year never happens type of
yeah,
assumption. But if it rolls out, and I think it will roll out next couple of years, like I think it's gonna shock people like
yeah.
to actually see these Tesla cars driving by themselves, picking up people. And this is like a new market, it's autonomous driving, like logistics, etc.
It's going to
And
open up new industries. Yeah.
yeah, I mean that in my opinion could really spark some, imagination from investors. Um,
Yeah, I saw one question some people were asking, like, it was like, what do you think about full self-driving rollout? If they roll it out in the next 2 weeks, is that going to spike the share price? And I think you and I, just because we've been watching the share price for so long, my take on that is, yeah, it's going to be a phenomenal feat. I'm going to be super excited when I see it rolled out more widely and it's working for everyone. But I'm not sure that's going to like spike that itself is going to spike the
yeah,
share price right away. It could take 6 months for that to like set in with the share price. Like when the Model 3 when the Model S came out in 2013, it was like the best car of the year by that magazine,
mhm,
Motor Trend, and like we all knew it was like awesome, right? I remember the stock price still was like floundering in the $30 to $40
yeah,
range for another like
yeah,
3 or 4 months. It took like 6 months until it sort of, finally reality hit with big money, so to speak, to invest in it, right? So the same thing could happen with full self. Like people seem to think full self driving is going to be like a short term catalyst, but I'm not sure it is. I think it's a longer, medium term catalyst for sure, for
mhm,
sure.
yeah.
But Short term, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I look at like full self-driving, like the early adopters and enthusiasts, the Tesla fans are excited about it, but big money doesn't care, you know? It's like
Yeah, yeah,
irrelevant. When they
yeah,
when they care, it'll be when they see it like on the road, picking up customers,
yeah,
charging customers, like, and then they can map out their Excel spreadsheets, you know, into
yeah,
valuations. Like that's when they're going to start caring for it, in my opinion. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I have to admit though, I am a bit tempted to sell some shares if Tesla spikes to like 8 or 900. Like
You'd sell a little bit.
I'm not sure. Like part of me thinks like if it goes up to 8 or 900, let's talk like market cap, right? So let's say it
Yeah.
goes up to $850 billion market cap. I'm kind of like it's kind of like I kind of feel like it's before the S&P 500 inclusion, you had kind of a market equilibrium about $400 billion market cap or so, right? And I felt like that was being generous still, but you know, it was what the market was deciding. Now after S&P 500, sure, let's boost that up a bit because of, you know, the inclusion, but like do I see a doubling of really the market cap just because it was included into the index? Like for me, I kind of think maybe equilibrium will trend down a bit, maybe between like 500 to 700 billion, you know, market cap. It might even go lower. I don't know. But
Mhm.
I feel like at 8 or 900 billion dollars, there's a decent chance, if not better than half chance that we do see, you know, some type of downtrend or you know, downward movement in the stock over the next, you know, month or two. So that I mean, that tempts me. I mean, it tempts me in a sense of like, you know, not necessarily like preserving gains. I'm not really into preserving gains, but
Mhm.
like, yeah, it tempts me in the sense of like maybe I could readjust my cost basis, a higher
Mhm.
thing. Maybe I could pick up some more shares, or maybe I could do some options bets, you know, in some way to maximize it. But then there's always risk too, you know. So I wanted
Mhm.
to ask you about this question. I was thinking about this all day, and I was kind of getting stressed about all this stuff, you know, because I'm like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, there's so many unknowns, and it's like, how much do I do?
Yeah.
What if I just sold all my stock, you know, and
Yeah.
just see what happened
Yeah.
versus like 10% and all this stuff. And then I'm kind of getting stressed about it, right? And I haven't really been stressed over my Tesla holdings in like long time, right? Because it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like with common stock, the awesome thing is I don't have to worry about timing, you know? I just
Yeah.
like kick back. But now
Yeah.
if I'm selling, if I'm buying, I'm doing options or something, I've got to think about timing, right?
Yeah.
Again. And so I was thinking like, wow, there's a cost, there's a stress to opportunity and to
Mhm.
kind of maximizing opportunity, right? And I was telling my wife, I'm like, I don't know, maybe we should just like have a longer horizon, you know? Hey, we did like 100x on, you know, on a significant amount, and we should be happy about that. That we did it not just in 8 years, but in 20 years. If you do 100x, that's amazing, you know?
Yeah. It's
Yeah. So,
incredible. Yeah.
hey, if we did another 10x, make it 30 years, right? So, let's say in
Yeah.
2042, we did a
Yeah.
10x from here. That would be
Yeah.
amazing, you know, a thousand
Yeah.
x. Like, no one, like,
Yeah.
this is crazy.
Yeah.
But here I am, I'm trying to maximize even more, you know, by
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
trade all this stuff. I'm like, and I'm getting stressed about it. Like, is it worth it? You know, I mean, that's my question. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I think you always have to consider your options. So I think it's smart. It can be stressful, like you said. It's a good stress, maybe think of it that way. If you can try to think you're like these are good options that you're considering. You know, it's much better than the opposite. If the stock is tanking, you have to decide whether or not you're going to hold it or ride it out or sell some at a loss. Or people that's a tougher, obviously, more stressful. So these are good options, and there's no I don't think there's any problem taking a little off the table if you've made 100x, for example, on something like that, especially. But it doesn't mean you have to sell, a lot or even half of it or a quarter of it. You could sell just 10% of it, something
Yeah.
like that even. I don't know. But I get what you're saying because there's lots of other opportunities out there, whether it's, Lemonade, like you've been looking at a lot carefully, and Roblox I'm big on coming up soon, or, you know, other things that we come across. There's a lot of other opportunities that we want to dedicate capital to for returns. And at some point, Tesla will be like an Apple, in my opinion, in terms of valuation. And it'll go up consistently, seemingly, maybe pay a dividend at some point, and then you can think about taking. That's how I think of it. Is then I can think about taking some off the table to like invest in bigger
Yeah.
disruptive opportunities.
Yeah. I was telling my wife my biggest fear in like selling a decent amount right now is just like not being able to get back in because
Yeah,
these aren't shares I want to sell per se,
I see.
like they're
These are
just,
like
it's just more
your long-term shares.
yeah, it's just opportunistic, type
Yeah,
of like selling, buying, trading type of thing. I'm like, if we sell at 8 or 900, even if it's just 10 or 20%, then it's like, if it doesn't go down as much as we want it to, because I'm like, what if you can buy it back at like 500 or
yeah,
550? But what if it hits like 650? It doesn't hit my
yeah,
price, and then it
yeah,
goes back up, and now we're left with a lot less shares, and I'd be like, yeah, it's like Tesla is not one of those companies I want to be left behind in.
yeah.
It's like if it
Yeah, I'm
was
not
like a
going to try
diff,
to time it to buy it lower because it could always
yeah.
start. It could be the opposite end of in our minds, it was super undervalued the last 5 years, 6 years until last year, right? And I was always struggling to understand how is this so undervalued? What am I missing? I'm always
Mhm.
trying to find. And now it's becoming more over. It's going to the other end of the spectrum, like you said, like with
Yeah,
institutional investors, it's going to become overvalued in some respects in terms of like Amazon or Netflix, similar to that, I think. And so you don't want to just try to time it in the middle, like I'm going to get it in lower, and then it just keeps getting more and more overvalued and you never get back in.
exactly. Yeah, I mean that's happened to a ton of people, like in the
Yeah,
past, and it's like,
yeah,
like I've seen it over and over. It's hard to time the exact like movements,
yeah, very,
especially when if you're doing it with like the bulk of your position. If you're doing it with like 5% or 10% or whatever, like
hmm,
you could hit or miss sometimes, and that's fine. But if you
yeah,
have like 80 or 90% of your whole portfolio in a company that you're wanting to hold long term, it's tough to try to, I think, time exactly everything. I haven't seen it
yeah,
work out for most people.
yeah. I agree, and I just think the valuation could go up significant. Like the market, everyone's going to want a piece of Tesla. There's no competitor in my mind, and I think you agree. Like self-driving, there's no good competitor. Like Waymo, they don't even produce cars. Like I saw Aurora just bought Uber's self-driving. Uber basically gave up, right? So is Apple? I saw Gene Munster talk today about like how he thinks Apple could be a threat to Tesla. I kind of laugh at that. I don't think so at all. Apple's such a big bureaucratic company by now. Like imagine them trying to like build a car from scratch. Like yeah, they can create software in a car, but they're not going to build the car from scratch in any successful way, in my opinion. It's going to be a huge feat for any company. And I mean, I could be wrong, but just my experience working in a giant company versus a smaller, nimble company, founder led, I just don't think there's any chance anyone competes with Tesla for a long, long time. And I think that'll be more clear to everyone, and everyone's going to want a piece. It's like a monopoly on this. It's not going to act like a monopoly, but it's sort of
Yeah.
like a monopoly on the technology of EVs and self-driving
Hmm.
and some of the spaces they
Yeah.
go into.
Yeah. So here's what we're going to do here is, so I'm going to wrap up this first part of our talk and come up with some title.
Okay.
And then we'll do a second part, and maybe even a third part. But I want to talk about kind of like some of the themes that we're talking about a little bit, like catching like a Tesla, like
Hmm.
before like everyone else catches it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Like what is it about like seeing something that you think is so undervalued, before other people see the value? Is that is that reproducible? Are there actually skills involved, or is it pure luck? Like what are some of the factors, that can help a person discover that? I think that's super valuable. I don't think it's talked about very much either.
I agree.
Yeah, so we'll talk about some of that stuff, and we'll call it part two. We'll release it maybe the day after or something. So, anyways, we'll wrap up here, part one, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Great.
Okay.